So, welcome to the first episode of my all new, all singing, all dancing podcast, all about gaming. Looking forward to talking about popular gaming kind of news and things that are going on just now. Kind of bringing more of my thoughts about the gaming world to more people. So I'm at BigGP1987. You can follow me on Twitter for more of my news and articles. And this is going to be the 1G Gaming Podcast. So, firstly, this is a big thanks to all the amazing people at TWM Plus, and I'd like to thank them for taking a chance on someone who was pretty new to writing and essentially had a passion for gaming and a lot of tech and consoles in my house. Over a year ago in 2021, I got the chance to start writing about them. Big shout out to my friend Ian, who kind of let me know that they were looking to expand more into gaming. And yeah, I've not looked back, and since then I've maybe had 40 or 50 articles on the website. So if that takes your fancy, go and read more at TWM.news. So yeah, thank you a lot to everyone there essentially for continuing to feature my articles and kind of putting up with all my random nonsense at 3 o'clock in the morning on WhatsApp. So the first episode of the podcast essentially I've titled Why Me? I know that it's a really busy space in kind of gaming podcast and news and world that goes on out there. So it just wanted to give you a little bit more background about why I think you should listen to me. Gaming and me have went hand in hand for as long as I can remember. My first console, although it was actually my big brother's, was a Nintendo Entertainment System. Way back in the early 90s, I remember spending way too many hours playing Super Mario Brothers, Duck Hunt, and Nintendo World Cup. I'm pretty sure they were all actually on the same cartridge, which is something I really, really miss, is getting multiple games in the one disc or cartridge. Growing up, I was always a Nintendo kid. Although I never owned one, another family member always used to let me borrow his SNES. So that kind of kept me under wraps and being a lazy little git when I was a younger boy. The SNES was a brilliant console and it felt like a massive jump up than what had came before in terms of the kind of graphics that were on offer and also even the amount of games. There seemed to be so many more games. There was always something new to play. And yeah, it kind of, I really got into it as it was probably one of the biggest things that they done on that console. It was platformers. That everything was a platformer, every single movie, every single TV show, let alone all the favourite characters like Mario or kind of Sonic on other consoles. But it was just platforms central and it was great. So yeah, I kind of continued on with the Nintendo theme for a fair wee bit, and I had a Game Boy, and as anyone of around my age did, played a fair bit of Pokemon, essentially swapping Pokemon with friends at school. And there was always that one kid that was looking to sell Pokemon. I was probably stupid enough to go and actually buy the Pokemon off him. Who knows how many weeks of pocket money that spent me. After that, the first kind of bit of gaming handheld that I remember actually owning properly and buying outright, rather than I think the Game Boy was a pass me down from another family member, was a Game Boy Advance. I saved up for ages for the Game Boy Advance and must have taken me about 6 months. And yeah, saved up, got it. And by the time I'd saved up the money for the actual console releasing, I could only afford one game. That one game ended up being Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. Now, as handheld or even probably mobile ports of games go, actually was pretty good. Unlike a lot of other kind of ports onto the handheld systems. I've replayed it recently on an emulator, and it's still okay, really, for what it was, considering the kind of hardware that it was on. So yeah, fond memories of the Game Boy Advance. So after that, it was kind of starting to get into console time. I had an N64, which I shared with my big brother. Now, I'm going to say that we went half and half on the cost. That might just be me looking back on it fondly. It was probably more so his money that I paid a little bit of, and it ended up staying in my room. I'm pretty sure I spent my entire first weekend playing Mario 64, and it was mind blowing at the time. I'd never played anything like that in kind of 3D. Not to mention it's such a fantastic game. So yeah, Mario 64 and the N64. The N64 was a console that I spent so much time with. Having 4 controller ports made it essentially perfect for having your friends round, which was the age that I was at the time. And yeah, between Mario Kart, GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, and one of the other ones, and this is where I get the chance to shout out my good friend Ali, Excitebike 64. We spent hours, and I mean hours, wasting away playing that game. Not even the racing. The racing was pretty so-so, but Excitebike 64 featured a bike football game. Now, that bike football game, I don't know, maybe someone that worked on it went on to work elsewhere, but that bike football game was Rocket League. If Rocket League stole it from Excitebike 64, I'm sure there's some money owed somewhere. But I've never heard anyone mention that, and every single time I play Rocket League, that's all that I can think, is that it's an Excitebike 64 ripoff. So yeah, many multiplayer nights later, playing the N64, I would end up with a GameCube. Now the funny, interesting story behind the GameCube was that I'm not sure what age, but I was starting to get to that age where you cause a little bit of trouble. And essentially, one night after a couple of drinks with my friend, and we were a wee bit pyro maniacs, as I say, lighters. Oh, look how big we can make the flame go. Yeah, so long story short, I burnt a hole in my bed covers. It doesn't get very much better in the fact that I obviously knew that I would get murdered when this got found by my parents, more so probably my mother. And essentially, I managed to teach myself how to sew, and that kind of held up for a wee while. No one noticed it, and certainly any time that she'd made my bed sheets, it was never picked up. However, the first time that it came to wash the bed sheets, that was it. Game was a bogey, was found out, and I was grounded. However, I kind of knew it was coming. So at that time, having my first job, I managed to get myself a GameCube. As a young man with nothing to actually really need money for, so you just bought whatever you wanted. So I bought myself a GameCube and Need for Speed Underground 2. I think anyone that's ever played Need for Speed Underground 1, 2, and probably, I think it was Most Wanted, the original Most Wanted that came after that. Those 3 games were great. And EA really should look to get back to that. I think everyone's crying out for essentially Need for Speed Underground 3, and that would be a great way to try and save what is now pretty much a dead franchise. So yeah, I was grounded, and Need for Speed Underground 2 got me through a good few weeks, months. I'm really not sure, it was that long ago now. But yeah, essentially the GameCube again with its little carry handle. It was just such a different console. The PlayStation 2 and the Xbox at the time were all about power and kind of being, the best or this, that, and that. The GameCube and Nintendo, as they would go on to show more, it really didn't care. It was the start of the Nintendo hitting their experimental phase when it came to consoles. And yeah, I loved it. So I did get a chance to have a PlayStation probably not long after my N64, but I didn't own it. To be honest, I was really late to the party with it. So I played games. I think I remember playing Tomb Raider, and I certainly remember playing Driver. Driver, again, was great, and I had a lot of chat about it at the time. This was before the days of Reddit and internet kind of things, but it was that type of game that in the playground people would say, "Oh, have you ever played Driver?" And it's a really good racing game, and having gone back to try it now and try and do that first fucking tutorial level, I probably find it easier now, considering I haven't picked the game up in probably 15 years, but at the time that was mind-blowing. It took us probably a week to get past that, to actually then go and play a game that was pretty easy after the intro level. So yeah, after that, I would be seduced by the motion controls of the Nintendo Wii, like so many others at the time were. Now, the Nintendo Wii, not to the same level as the Xbox Series X and S and PlayStation 5 were when they released last year. But essentially, yeah, there was a waiting list to try and get a Nintendo Wii. It really kind of caught the public kind of trends, and grannies were buying them, old families were buying them. It was such a kind of family friendly console, and everyone wanted to experiment it. Sure enough, like outside a handful of kind of games, I don't think anything really done the motion controls justice. The fact that Wii Sports is probably the best game that you can play on the console in terms of what it can actually do, and it's so simple, but it was great. But yeah, the Nintendo Wii was fun, but I kind of hit that age where I was getting a little bit older, and that was me. I wanted something with more adult games. I'd missed out on a lot of games, GTA, kind of things like that. They just weren't coming to the Nintendo console, so I decided time was with it, that I would take it all to a gaming shop and essentially trade it all in, and I got myself an Xbox 360. Looking back, I can't remember why I got the Xbox 360 over a PlayStation 3. Essentially, I think it was cost related. It was a lot cheaper at the time when I picked up my Xbox 360 because all my friends were PlayStation daft. They'd had PlayStation 2s and they'd moved on to PlayStation 3s, even though it was a huge, expensive console. But yeah, the 360 it was a console that I loved. I went through a couple of them. I did have one that Red Ring of Death. I then picked up the Elite, the black version of the console with a slightly bigger hard drive, and I had that for years. I think my father actually still has it in his house just now, and it lasted so long. But the one of the games that I really fell in love with on the Xbox 360 was Gears of War. To this day, it's still one of my favourite games ever. I think it looks amazing even now, especially if you're playing the remastered version. That's slightly cheating. But Gears of War is it's such a brilliant game, and it looked light years ahead of its time when it first released. So a little later again, and still not any better with my money, I'd kind of made that decision by now that I was going to stick with Xbox and essentially upgraded to the Xbox One. Even after the terrible launch fiasco of them bundling in a Kinect, it was more expensive than the PlayStation 4 and less powerful. I think it was really to do with the fact that I'd started buying games digitally. I knew that all that was going to stay with me, and I couldn't really be bothered moving over. So yeah, I don't regret it. There was a lot of good games at the time when it first released. I can remember playing Rise, Son of Rome. Now, it was a little basic, but that game still looks great, even to this day. You see a lot of people calling online to get a sequel for it, and it really was. It's a great game, great to look at. Just needed fleshed out probably a little bit more in terms of gameplay. Other than that, I played quite a lot of games. I've always been that type of guy that'll walk into a shop, and if anything's under £20, even if I've never wanted to play it before, I'll kind of consider picking it up just for an experience. So I had a lot of games, and that was me. I was locked in, I was Xbox, and it was going to take something absolutely huge to drive me away from being Xbox kind of first. So after that, I would do the same again when I decided that I wanted something slightly better. And I took all my games and consoles and controllers that I picked up by that point and went and traded them in for an Xbox One X. Now, although it was the same console but a little better, the jump to 4K really was mind blowing. By that point in time, I'd managed to get myself a big 4K TV, and yeah, people would come in and kind of comment, especially some of the games that were running on at the time. I think probably Forza Horizon 3, probably Forza Motorsport as well was another one of the games. I think it was 7 was one of the first games to have HDR, thanks to the Xbox One X, and they looked beautiful, really brilliant. So yeah, I really like Xbox. I'm a huge fan of Game Pass. Essentially, Game Pass I think is a wonderful thing. I'm not as tied to a lot of people are online as to where you need to own your games. If you're gaming, you're gaming as far as I'm concerned. And if you can only afford £15 a month, Game Pass is probably the best way to spend that money on your games. So as I said, now I was getting gaming, and rather than buying what I could when I was younger, as most of us do, I was starting to hit that stage where essentially if I wanted something, it didn't take me long to kind of pick it up. So as much as I'd never owned a kind of PlayStation and bought one myself, I decided that now was the time to jump in. PlayStation 4 was, by this point, although it had a relatively slow start in terms of games, they now released a lot of games that I wanted to go and play. I wanted to experience God of War. I wanted to experience The Last of Us, and the last one that I really wanted to try was Spider-Man. So I did a lot of searching on eBay and I managed to pick up a pre-owned one. It's a pretty good price, came with 2 controllers, and I think it was Call of Duty Black Ops 3. I'm not a first person shooter player. I'll jump into story modes, but that doesn't have much of a story mode. So essentially I wasn't really bothered about the game that was coming with it. It was just the console that I wanted. So when it arrived, I quickly realised that the previous owner had already upgraded the hard drive to a 2 terabyte hard drive, which came in really handy. And yeah, I was chuffed to bits. I actually don't think the game actually worked at the time. I think there was a scratch on the disc, but I wasn't bothered. I then managed to pick up Spider-Man, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, and The Last of Us. Essentially got them all on sales or second hand. I can't quite remember which one was which. Now, I really enjoyed all of them, but I had some issues with certainly The Last of Us. I felt it was a little bit slow, and I didn't think that the combat system was as good as some people had maybe made out. So I was a little bit disappointed by that. I could appreciate God of War and Horizon Zero Dawn. I just, for whatever reason it was at that time, I couldn't stick with them. So I kind of quickly tailed off on them. Spider-Man, however, was phenomenal. It was a really good length. It looked great. It played great. It was acted great. And for me, it's probably the best game of the last generation. Insomniac really have been on fire in the last wee while. Looking at any other games that were released, but for me, Spider-Man was just excellent. One of the things that I found the biggest issue with when it came to PlayStation was the controller. Years and years of muscle memory of having sticks in different positions, asymmetrical, made it really, really hard to play on the DualSense controller. It was just something that I really couldn't get used to. But I did eventually, after a lot of online search, manage to find a PlayStation 4 controller with the same stick setup as the Xbox, and that certainly made me enjoy my time with it a wee bit more. So that kind of, in terms of consoles, and that brings me up to pretty much now my current setup, which is PC gaming, and that's now became my love. Essentially, I think it's great. I don't think it's easy, but it is something I really, really enjoy. Back in 2020, when all our lives were changed and we entered, lockdowns and we couldn't go anywhere and everyone was stuck in their houses, it was kind of that time where it was like, right, okay, let's find something to do. So I decided that I would get into kind of maybe building a small PC. It did start off as originally something for work. My work, we were working remotely and we'd all been issued Chromebooks. And as someone that likes it when things just work, a Chromebook was not for me. Chromebooks are good for a couple of things. Checking the weather, maybe watching a little bit of YouTube and looking at porn. As far as that's all they're good for. And I'll tell you what, don't try and do any of those 3 things at the same time. They just can't handle it. So yeah, I decided I was going to build a PC. So yeah, when it comes to PC building, if you're ever going to get into it, do your research. I should have decided what I wanted and then went and got it. And what I actually did was I thought I knew what I was doing, went ahead and bought something and quickly threw together it was like a small form factor old office computer. I got that, got a graphics card that would fit inside it, which there isn't many. But I got the most powerful one that you could get, the NVIDIA 1650, and essentially threw it in there. And surprise, surprise, the little thing worked. So it was great for doing all that I had to do in terms of working from home. have multiple monitors, and it ran so much better than the Chromebook. But it also kind of made me start to think, maybe I can do a little bit of gaming on this. And PC Game Pass essentially let me try a lot of games that I didn't need to buy again, and I could try them on the PC. I think one of the first games that I really remember being impressed with was Wreckfest, a driving game. And although I had an Xbox One X, which could obviously play the game at high resolution, it was the fact that I could change the game how I wanted. I could drop the resolution to get a little bit better frame rate, or I could drop the frame rate to get a little bit better resolution. There was actually even some kind of graphical settings that I thought that's a lot better than what even the base Xbox has shown me. So it really got me interested, and I decided that I wanted more. As most PC gamers do, infinite power is never enough. You're always going to look for the next upgrade, look for the next thing that you can do. So yeah, that then led me to kind of deciding, right, now's the time to get something better. So I got a lot of vouchers for my Christmas and got, it wasn't quite a complete build. It was a newer PC, a bit bigger case, a new CPU. It was an AMD 3600X. So it was a big jump on what I'd had before, because I think that was because I went through a couple, but I think it was a 3570 Intel i5, which was maybe about 13 years old. It's still done a job, to be fair, but the AMD CPU was obviously a lot more modern and would hopefully give me a kind of good jump up. The issue was, this was about right at the time when scalpers really became of nuisance to anyone wanting to buy anything in tech. And also thanks to, as I'd said, the lockdowns that we were all experiencing. You couldn't go to a shop and just pick up what you needed. You had to shop online. And that meant scalpers were quickly able to use bots and all sorts of horrible methods, buying up the stock of everything that everyone wanted, and then reselling it for 14 times the price on eBay or StockX or other places like that. To be fair, even some of the retailers got in on it and the prices started to go up on any stock that they did get, and it was really, really depressing. But I knuckled down and kept on looking, and eventually I managed to get my hands on a 3070 NVIDIA GPU. To be exact, it was a Paletcom. I think it was a Gaming Pro overclock. There's a couple of different ones, but it was such a huge upgrade on what it had before, and even compared to the Xbox One X, it really delivers some unbelievable performance. So yeah, I got it in the PC, and there's been a wee couple of other upgrades, more storage, better RAM, and definitely a lot more lights. But I love my PC. I love that I can pretty much play anything that I want on it. I never need to worry about, is it good enough to be able to play that game? I think the only games that I've really struggled, Halo Infinite, just to me doesn't run particularly well. And I don't know if it's something that I've done in the settings. I've reset it, I've uninstalled it, reinstalled it. It always feels a bit stuttery. So I'm not sure if that's me or if it's just an issue with Halo. It's okay if you lock it to 60 frames a second, but if you try and go anything further than that, it's just not a good experience. Cyberpunk 2077 is also another game that I'm not going to be playing at extremely high frame rates, but I can still play it at pretty much solid 60 with medium to high level graphics and a little bit of ray tracing. Especially if you're going to try and use DLSS, that does allow you to kind of make, and it looks stunning. I think Cyberpunk, it deserved the criticism that it got at the time of its release. But anyone jumping in now on a kind of newer graphics card, I think in general performance on PC is actually a lot better. Or either of the newer consoles, the Xbox Series consoles, or the PlayStation 5. But yeah, as I said, I can pretty much play anything I want. I've got an ultra wide monitor. It's wonderful, it's pretty, and other than pissing off my partner by the amount of space that it takes up in the corner, I absolutely love it to bits. For me, I think PC gaming will remain my main gaming platform probably until I stop gaming, which hopefully will be a fair wee while yet. But I've now got a family. I don't get the same amount of time to game as what I used to. So there'll probably be a day one day where, I'll get told, unless I can get a bigger house and get myself a man cave, that, my gaming needs to either go back to be a console that can hide underneath a TV, or I might need to give it up altogether, depending on how old I am. In terms of PC being your main gaming platform, one of the good things now is essentially it's becoming easier than ever to recommend it. With Xbox, pretty much all their console exclusive games also come to PC on day one release. And again, if you're subscribed to Game Pass, or more so Game Pass Ultimate, if you've got an Xbox, you can play the games on your Xbox. You can also play the games on your PC. If you only have a PC, you can sign up for PC Game Pass and get all the games as well. I think with the amount of games that are on offer, I think it's unbelievable value for money. Anyone that doesn't see the value in it, I think they've probably got other issues, and it's not actually the value that they're looking at. And the other thing is, as well, even more so recently, PlayStation are finally starting to bring a lot of their games to the PC. Now, it works a little differently than your Xbox games. You're waiting a little bit more time for them to come to PC. God of War, the PC port took around 4 years. Spider-Man will be probably close to 4 years as well by the time it releases at the end of 2022. Horizon Zero Dawn was a couple of years. Days Gone was a couple of years. But the important thing is, if you're on the PC, you're never going to struggle and go, oh, I've got nothing to play. Between the indie games, between all the other third-party games that come to all platforms, there's always going to be something that you can go and play. You're not going to struggle. So for me, the waiting isn't an issue. It would be great if they released them all on day one. I think the games would sell a lot more on PC if they released them on day one. Because, there would be more fans shouting about it at the time and wanting to play it. There's more interest. That's just natural. But maybe they'll get to that stage one day. I'm not sure. But just now, I think really you've got Ratchet and Clank, GT7, Ghost of Tsushima, and maybe Bloodborne. That's really what we're waiting on coming to PC from PlayStation. It's not that many, considering a couple of years ago it looked unlikely that we were going to have very much at all. So, in terms of Nintendo, this becomes a wee bit more murky. You can play their games on PC, but it's also possibly slightly, maybe more illegal. I'm not going to stick myself in for anything that I have done. I know that Nintendo like watching over these things, but if you would like to do it, I'm pretty sure that you can search and find a YouTube video where it'll explain how to do it. Some people have made the point to me that it's more expensive to start with PC gaming than a console. So I understand that if you want a good to high-end graphics card just now, you're essentially going to be, a lot more money to outlay than a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X. For what they offer, 4K, 60 frames a second for £450, it's exceptional. And they really are fantastic value for money. And the consoles, certainly early on, they seem a lot less underpowered than certainly the last generation of consoles were. But my argument would be, if you went and bought every single console from the last 20 years, so say an Xbox One, an Xbox 360, a Nintendo 64, a GameCube, a PlayStation 2, and the list goes on. But if you went and bought all of those, you would have some amount outlay on cost, not to mention the fact, where would you put them all? However, no matter what I've spent on what I've got just now, I can go and play those games if I want to. and I think it's something that's kind of missed when it comes to PC gaming, and it's PC gaming rocks. So yeah, another thing that I wanted to kind of talk about was why gaming means so much to me. Now, gaming has helped me through some really tough times, including a kind of probably about 7, 8 year battle with depression, mental health issues, anxiety, and all the other kind of problems that come alongside that. Certainly, they always seem to come bundled together anyway. It's helped me at times where I didn't want to go out and experience the world, when I didn't want to talk to people. There was always a kind of world that I could go and escape to, or even just kind of to bring my thoughts back down from maybe where they were, something else to focus on. And that's why gaming means a lot to me. It's also helped me kind of with things like problem solving. I like to think now that when it comes to problem solving something in real life, I think about it a wee bit differently. Certainly, I know my partner's commented on that quite a few times, that when I take on problem solving, I'll have quite a lateral approach to it. And I'll always try and relate back to something that I've experienced before. And that all comes from video games. So, yeah, gaming should be for everyone, no matter how hardcore or how casual. It doesn't matter where you game, what console you game on. What matters is that you like video games, or you like playing video games, you like watching video games. As far as I'm concerned, that makes you a gamer, and yeah, that's good enough for me. Now I'm a little older, it is harder to spend a lot of the time I'd like to playing games. I'm never happier than when I'm sitting experiencing a new game for the first time, getting to see what it's like. But essentially, yeah, I think everyone should try and make a lot of time and space for themselves. And gaming's been great for me to be able to do that. So yeah, that's the end of episode 1. As I said, hopefully that gives you a little bit more information and kind of an idea of what I'm about when it comes to gaming. And hopefully I'll be back with episode 2 shortly. So essentially for now, I'm going to leave it there. But if you are interested, come and have a look at TWM.news. Essentially read our articles, read my articles. But more importantly, yeah, thanks for listening, and hopefully I'll see you soon.